Welcome to another Mutterings, everybody. We're getting really sporadic on when we post these, but hey, today we're going to be talking about some of the past few days' dumbass news. News.
No, you
And
had it right.
we'll be going, we'll be starting with a topic that I think is near and dear to everyone's heart. The Palworld lawsuit. Have you heard about this, Farv?
Yeah, I've heard about it, right? And it's fucking stupid. But it seems
I
like. Go ahead. Before I get into that rant, I'll let you explain it.
I love that the patents are so egregious and stupid on Nintendo's part, and the point that they literally patented some of these things after a game came out, and they were granted it. And the fact is, if any actual court in Japan is stupid enough to let Nintendo get away with this, they deserve the complete and utter abandonment by studios that they're going to get outside of Nintendo.
Yeah, pretty much. And let's be real, Nintendo has done this before, and Japanese courts have let them get away with it before.
Well, to do undue amounts of damage
It will, but
to that
it depends
industry.
on how much foresight they have instead of adhering to tradition where it doesn't actually
Well,
apply.
they didn't get laughed out of the copyright office, so there you go. I mean, no matter what you
Yeah.
think, and I think that they did a lot of copying. Let's be perfectly honest.
They
The
did.
the end goal of this comes down to Nintendo is so flipping lazy that the mere concept of them having to actually do something, that causes or requires effort is
Well,
enough for
anything
them
that
to
takes
run out and
competition, anything that seems to take any actual legitimate competition, they seem to have a problem with anymore.
they just don't seem like they are interested in trying. And I think that's a red flag for anybody who's concerned about, well, how should I say, the customer.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Nintendo has. Uh, in the long run, I don't think they are going to outlive the original OG creators, just because when it comes to certain games, they are so unbelievably lazy and stingy. And with Pokemon, for example, Pokemon is
Yeah.
literally almost a copy paste for decades.
Well, it's been like the last three games. Haven't they used the same or similar engine with
They're
very little improvement?
one of the most, or literally the most profitable entertainment franchise in the world, and they can't get a game that I think 12 developers from Palworld didn't make a better version of
Ugh.
out.
And
Should
that's
be.
considering, and I do want to address one thing. That is considering that there are plenty of elements of Power World that are not identical. For fuck's sake, it's got weird shit in common with like Fortnite and some other game, building focused games, just as much as it does Pokemon.
Well, it
But
does what a lot of games do. It sees something that another studio did
and
successfully and
tries to do it
copies it.
better.
And then that's how games have worked. Effectively, in Japan, if a court lets Nintendo get away with this, they've ended iteration
Yeah,
effectively.
pretty much
And
because
also,
Nintendo will just be able to go and lawsuit anybody.
I would love to see them try to square off with the MLB or the Japanese Baseball League. Good luck with that, guys. I think you might have some trouble there.
Well, there's rumors that Sony may be stepping in on behalf of the Pal World guys, and if they do, Nintendo's got a problem. Because even with recent losses on Concord and some of that dumb shit, Sony still has more than enough money to take Nintendo to court
No,
or to support the case.
they've clowned Nintendo before. Let's just be perfectly
Yeah.
honest. I don't know how much I believe any of it, but it would depend.
It's not likely unless Sony is planning to acquire them.
Unless they're thinking it's going to be something that rivals Pokemon, then hell yeah, they would acquire it. But it's a stupid situation, which any way you fall on it, it's a really petty move on Nintendo's part. It seems more like an insult to their customers because it's just like a blatant, well, we don't want to try, so let's just get rid of the things that require us to actually have to compete.
Yeah, let's remove any potential competition via fucking lawfare because we know that the Japanese court system is so obsessed with legacy that they'll just let us get away with it.
And, all right, well, let's move on over to our next topic.
Go ahead.
Now, this is another one that depending on where you're interested in, but it's in a similar sphere of air quote nerdy things. There's been a number of retcons to the Horus Heresy in Warhammer, the Warhammer universe. And that includes a set of armor that's not supposed to be, they're supposed to have fallen into anyone's hands
Talking
till
about the
the
Mark 7, are we?
no, Mark 7 armor until the very end of the Horus Heresy, which is a big event in that universe. It's complete retconning, and I think it's due to marketing because they plan on shoving that set of armor as a set that they're going to sell to people.
Yeah, and let's be real. At this point, games has become infamous for wanting to recycle things that require the least bit of effort.
And honestly, I think it comes down to the fact that they really just don't want to have to deal with living by anything that's preset, so they just alter it willy-nilly.
Yeah.
And they changed Sigismund's kind of storyline where he gets the black sword during the Siege of Terra, and it's a whole ridiculous thing, and I think it's important to bring it up because the second you start altering a setting is the moment you start changing up its coherency in the mind.
Well, as if we've discussed on our own in the past, altering the lore affects loyalty. Because it gives people less reason to remain loyal to something that's inconsistent.
Well, if the foundation of it can constantly change and shift, that means everything that you interact with has no actual value within it. It's because it is simply be changed or altered any time that someone feels like. And that does affect people's buy-in, because a lot of people are like, well, if I like that story and they're just going to change it and then change it and then change it, then why should I waste my time and money?
And in the case of Warhammer, it's like we've seen the disingenuous argument that, well, Horus Heresy changed this back when I played the game when I was a kid, and it was fanfic and lore breaking back then. It's like, no, that's not the problem. The problem is all the things that Games Workshop has done leading up to this and how disingenuous they are each and every time about changing everything at will.
Well, let me put it like this. There is a distinct difference between a developing story and an established story.
Mm-hmm.
The second you start changing up an established story, people who had bought into that are going to be like, okay, what's the point? When you have a developing story, there are obviously going to be growing pains and alterations and changes. It's at the point which you have an entire novel series, a gigantic collection of miniatures, and a book set for rules that have been put out and established these things, and then you just go, tee-hee, we changed our mind. Because the marketing department...
The entirety of the past is different now because...
So, no, don't come at me with some, it's changed in the past, brah. You could go screw yourself. I'm not going to play that game. If you don't understand the context between those two things, it's not worth me wasting your time and you wasting mine. So, that's my words. What do you think about the situation?
Considering what I read about it and what I know about it, it's bullshit retcon for the sake of retcon and marketing. Like almost everything else that GW has done recently, it stinks of, hey, let's make, like I said in my piece earlier, it stinks of let's make Mark 7 the one big thing so that we can sell it to everybody and make something cheaper and charge more for it. Because it's the Games Workshop way at this point.
I wouldn't be shocked. All right, well, let's not belabor that topic. So here we got another one. So you're familiar with what's been going on with D&D, right?
Consider we used to play it a long time ago before 5th edition.
So here's a big shocker.
Stupid.
Chris Cox claims to have friends. That was and a large group of friends. I don't believe him. I believe the only friends he has are the type that he sits in a chair in his bedroom and watches. Oh. But, and I did say think, but they've been pushing all in on AI recently.
Well, I feel like before we get into that, it's worth noting that for months, They have been arguing with people and calling them naysayers and liars for claiming that D&D was going to and was using AI in some of their materials, which they
Yep.
kept vehemently arguing that they were not going to do and that they weren't doing. And now here we are with Chris Cox saying the quiet part out loud, going, "Oh yeah, AI, yeah."
Yeah, it's a major problem. I was going to get to that, but it's an issue only, in my opinion, because they argued against doing it, and they know their customers don't want it.
And yet they're going to do it anyway because Chris Cox hasn't given a fuck about the customers since he came into power.
It's because he wants to turn it into a.
He wants to turn it into mobile gaming so he can fucking gotcha DLC it to death.
Which I don't think is going to help that brand, but
Well, consider how many players have left, found other systems, or just stopped buying any of the new material in protest. One D&D is not a popular concept.
also I'm going to make this argument, and it's similar to, I think, the one Clownfish had mentioned.
Probably.
But this is my spin on it. If you are using a program, right, and you can use it to create something, the program needs to either be exclusive to keep people from using it themselves to create the same thing, too expensive for people to want to bother, or too complicated for them to be willing to do. This is the argument of why 3D printers were initially not as big of a deal, but have become more and more of a replacement for a lot of places making their own stuff.
Yeah.
But in this case, when you're talking about AI doing the art and the books and the writing and
you are
all
literally
of it,
using this as an excuse, Mr. Dickhead, I mean Cox, to fucking fire everyone you can and fucking appease some shareholders because your company is a sinking ship and it's sinking into a barrel full of shit.
well, here's the argument that as I saw it, what stops people from just using things like ChatGPT and making all of it themselves? There's
Because if
no
all you're doing to make content is using AI, there's things other people can use, that will do the same thing.
Why pay
They don't need you
when I can have a free program that does the same things? So the whole argument is beyond stupid.
It falls flat as hell.
And I mean, quite honestly, it's out beyond ludicrous that they think they'll get people to pay for this. And on top of it, that they think people will buy that Chris Cox has friends that play D&D with him and not his wife. So, I mean it as
getting
a
out
joke.
of that joke. I mean,
It was a
I'm not
bad
sure.
joke,
I'm not sure if it is a joke, but I don't
doesn't
care.
matter. The guy's a cock. Or a cox, if you prefer. So the last one we have is... this is probably the most serious of all of them. And it's the Dragonquest betrayal of Toriyama. Where they've waited till he's been dead so that they can modify his art.
While Shueisha and Bird Studio fight with the man who he willed his legacy and IP to for Dragon Ball, now we have Square Enix pulling all this censorship bullshit on remasters of his older Dragon Quest works right after his fucking passing.
While doing a bunch of alterations to the original Dragon Quest games that remove a number of things. So I'm going to say my piece real quick.
Go ahead.
This is exactly what I expect from a corporation. Corporation has no value or respect for those who actually created the things that they're profiteering off and then claim as their own, because none of the people really that were involved in these things are there really anymore. And they have no ability, therefore, to understand why something's successful and capable of doing it, because they don't understand any degree of artistic merit or capability. It's a bunch of talentless hacks profiteering off something. And
I mean, that's a lot. Like we've said in one of my things, I had it on the screen about it's the corporate executive way, which it pretty much is. Most execs don't know shit.
So it's a disgusting thing to do. Plus, it changes up what you'd expect and want to experience, because when you're getting a remake of a game this old, right? You want as close to the original experience, at least in how it works and plays out, even if there's a few
It should be
alterations.
more like, I mean, especially with a game this old, it should be more like the remake they did of like that Star Ocean game
Which is actually what they were
recently,
going
which,
for until they
yeah,
started changing a bunch of stuff.
until the alterations began.
This
Yeah.
just reinforces my all remakes are a bad idea because it
Well,
invites people
and the
who
thing
don't.
is, we were all in support of remasters, but now Square and Capcom have started fucking with remasters.
I just think that things should get re-released to work on newer platforms, and then it stopped there, because none of these people can be trusted within an inch to do anything if they have any creative output. And it's ridiculous, but it's especially when you have someone this big of a deal, and to do it in the Japanese market first.
Yeah, and let's say that it's not being handled well by the Japanese gaming community any more than, you know, the outside the handful of nutters in the West who are like, oh yeah, yeah, blah 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 wokeism, and I don't care what they actually say because it doesn't matter. But
The
the
people who
Japanese
don't
audiences are
actually
taking it
spend
even
any time.
worse. They've been insulting Square, calling for their downfall, calling for the game to be canceled or completely redone. In the case of both Square and Capcom recently, they're sick of this bullshit. And the Japanese market rejecting a game is not good for Capcom or Square.
Nope. And this is a reason why I've said repeatedly that I do not like the Resident Evil 2 remake. I think it's a bad idea. And, you know, when you see that there are people who are put in these projects who hate the properties, who don't have any respect for the people involved in it or the creation
Yeah.
process, it's just like, okay, then just don't do it. Just release the
Seriously, leave it
thing
be.
to play on a newer system and go screw off. We don't need a revision of it. And the reason they do it most of the time is so they can
It's just
chuck a
for
bigger price
marketing,
tag
yeah.
on it.
So they can sell an older game for $60, $70. And then they put all this bullcrap in there to appease whatever investor, or in the case of Japan, some leftist politicians.
So, you know, that's my opinions of it, and I think it's a disgusting thing to do this soon after death.
After
But,
his passing, yeah.
you know, when you're dealing with a bunch of corporate idiots, this is exactly what you get. So, thank you for joining us on this. I know it's been a bit ranty,
But that's kind of what these are.
a bit out there, but we're not here for hard-hitting news. We're just here to put out our opinions. So if you agree with us, disagree with us, let us know. Tell me how stupid I am in this comment sections, and you have a lovely time, everybody.
See everybody later. We're out.
Bye-bye.